you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Doing well. I talked with Damian Larkin this morning. So he's with Dancing Lemur as
Yes.
well. And so Alex sent him. I'm like, great. I'm going to have a stockpile of interviews that I can pop in as we go into Thanksgiving and Christmas and relax a little.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. I've got to do the same thing with my YouTube videos. I have like a whole stack of things I need to do, and I just got to sit down and put on the video camera and do it all in one shot one day. I'm just going to run right through them all, and then I'll be exhausted.
Yep, but it'll be done, and you can enjoy your holidays.
No, then it'll be done and ready for me to start the editing process.
Oh, yes, I'm not even thinking about that today. We'll get to that. Oh, well, I'm glad you're here. I guess I should ask beforehand about how much time do you have so that I don't keep you longer than you have?
As much as you need. I'm free right now, so I'm good to go.
Okay. It seems to be like we're averaging 30 to 40 minutes with the interview. So if that's good, we'll get ready to just jump in and go. Sound good?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome back to Loose Leaf Author Podcast. Hillary and Kahle could not be with us this week, and I'm excited to have Scott Coon with us. He is the author of Lost Helix, his debut novel that just came out in June 2020. Would you like to introduce yourself, Scott?
Hello, my name is Scott Coon. As you stated, my debut novel, Lost Helix, it just came out in June. It's a YA science fiction adventure story where you follow DJ across the void as he tries to find his missing father and the mother he never knew while being chased by corporate agents. I've been writing basically my entire life, and I first got published in I think it was 2006 in Nth Degree magazine. Firewall was my first short story, and I've had over a dozen short stories published since then. I've won some accolades along the way, and this is my first novel.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on it. I know that's a big milestone for a lot of us writers to have that first novel finished.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
thank you very much.
I know you also have a YouTube station where you talk with writers, and do you want to tell us something about that?
Yes, my YouTube station is mostly dedicated at the moment to Lost Helix. It's got several things that inspired Lost Helix, such as the variety of space travel, translates space travel that you can find in the world, and that's actually an important part of my story. And then, other things besides Lost Helix, I've been doing reads of my short stories, and I've also had Alex Kane, a popular stand-up comedian, did the reading of Trademark, a Tragedy, which is very much a comedy. And in addition to that, I've also started doing some writing advice, and it's more, so far it's I've done one for log lines, which is the most difficult 2 or 3 sentences you'll ever write in your life. You've just written 100,000 words. Sum it up in 30 seconds.
Yes, exactly.
And
well,
then,
we'll
of
make
course,
sure we point to your YouTube in the links of our notes.
But the direction I'm taking recently with that is I started writing basically science for writers, for sci-fi writers, and the first one I have out there is planet building, which is very different from world building. George R.R. Martin did a great job of planet building by throwing everything out of whack by having the moon destroyed. So great job to him. Everybody else, try creating something other than Earth. Trust me, there's a lot you can do out there.
Agreed. Well, and Earth is so unique that it would probably be more realistic if it wasn't like Earth.
Exactly. Earth is a very unusual planet.
Oh. Well, I'm excited. I actually picked your book up. I'm only about 20 pages in, but I'm really enjoying it. So DJ hasn't left yet. His dad has just come back from wherever he was. And so I have a feeling everything's about to explode. So no spoilers, but I really am enjoying it so far.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Something that I noticed when I was purchasing it, you said in your bio on Amazon, you're talking about science fiction and that it's really for you all about the what comes next question. And I
Yeah.
love that because science fiction is about asking questions. And I love, why don't you share with our listeners what you meant by what comes next with this
Well,
story?
what comes next? Well, what comes next to me is, oh, well, a lot of science fiction writers do this thing. Well, what happens after that thing? It's like terraforming. There's all this work done about terraforming. Aliens, the second Alien movie, actually is centered around a planet that's in the middle of terraforming. Leviathan Wakes is about terraforming too, terraforming Mars gradually. So is Total Recall. But nobody ever talks about like, well, okay, so we get way out into deep space and you terraform a planet and now it's totally ready. Then what? Well, there's a government involved. Somebody's paid a lot of money and put a lot of effort into terraforming this planet. They're not just going to say, okay, it's open. There you go. Have fun. No, they're going to organize this. So I actually have a big bureaucracy that is like a backdrop to part of the story. You haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the, well, you've heard about it. It's called New Green. That's the terraforming place.
Okay.
So yeah. And then there's also things like, also in Leviathan Wakes, a multi-generational interstellar ship. So you're going to be born on the ship, you're going to die on this ship, and one of your descendants is going to land at the other end. Well, that's all very interesting. And there's a lot of untold stories in there.
Right.
But one story that I don't think anybody's ever thought about is like, okay, so you get all the way to the other side, you unload everybody onto the planet, you strip the machine for parts, but you still got this big thing up in orbit. You probably didn't take all the parts. What are you going to do with that? So I actually have them float the dome ships that populated Stone River floating around out there doing things.
That's awesome.
They're, yeah, specifically, and this isn't a spoiler at all, really, and it's actually on the cover of the book. They're feeding the farmers, the miners, the people that are mining Stone River are now being fed by what used to be a city. The city's gone, and he filled it with dirt.
Wow.
And it's actually a lot more interesting in there once you get inside those domes. It's a lot more complicated than one would think. It's more than just farmland.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I can't wait to get to that point. Okay, I have some very basic questions, but at any time, if there's anything else you feel like sharing and talking about, just jump right in, okay?
Sure.
Okay, so you said you've been writing for many years. You started with short stories. What kind of got you interested in writing to begin with?
You know what? That is literally a mystery. I have no clue. There were no writers around me. There was an artist. There was a musician. No writers.
All right.
And for some reason, in the third grade, I spontaneously started writing poetry. Most of the poetry centered around Norse mythology, but I know where that came from because I was reading Thor comics.
Yeah.
And that one thing led to another, and I'm writing Norse mythology poetry.
That's cool.
But why poetry? I have no idea. The only poem that I know of that was in my life back then was "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." So it's a mystery lost to time.
Yeah. But hey, that's a great place to start because I actually think poetry, for me anyway, is way harder than writing a novel. It's got a lot of structure that I don't deal well with. So, wow, third grade, that's amazing.
Thank you. And some of my books, Lost Helix does not have a poem in it, but some of the books I'm working on right now actually have poems in there that are a part of the story. Like
Cool.
And one's a mystery thriller where a poem's actually a part of the clue. There's a clue to what's going on in the whole thing.
See, that's awesome.
Wrote in my life, and it's purposely bad.
You wrote the poem purposely bad?
Yes, I wrote it as bad as I could with it still qualifying as a poem.
That's awesome.
bad, so was bad at this, so I had to make it bad.
Yeah. Well, see, I could do that. I wouldn't have to try to make it bad. So, so do you have any particular books or authors that really inspired you in your writing? I mean, I guess kind of the other side of that is why choose science fiction?
Well, when I first started out, I actually sat down when I was 21 years old in a library and made a conscious decision based on advice that I received in the foreword of a Pierce Anthony book. I got a lot of good advice from Pierce Anthony. Wrote some really good writing advice in there, like you need to write 3 novels and throw them away. And I wrote more than 3 novels and threw them away, so I'm ahead of the game on that. Kurt Vonnegut is my all-time favorite author. I think his writing is amazing, and I don't think I could ever do some of the things that he can do in writing, where he jumps through time, but you don't feel like you're jumping through time. You feel like you're in the story in a very linear way. And I think that's just astounding that he was able to do that. His best book is his least science fiction book, which is Hocus Pocus, which has an amazing science fiction story hidden inside it. But the story itself is not science fiction at all. Cat's Cradle with Ice Nine is an amazing story. Player Piano, I actually have a story idea that I'm planning to write at some point soon. That's kind of a homage to that, or kind of a counter to that book, actually. And Galapagos. Galapagos was a truly amazing book where I won't give it away how that goes, but you should definitely Kurt Vonnegut.
Cool. I could definitely do that. And so is that kind of what directed you towards science fiction after poetry, or did your poetry have sci-fi vibes through it? I mean, you mentioned Norse mythology, so.
Well, Norse mythology is Norse mythology. Kind of its own kind of science fiction, because fantasy is kind of its own science fiction.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what pulled me in the direction of science fiction over fantasy, was that at the time I felt like there was a larger world that you could do, more directions you could go with science fiction than fantasy. But that was because back then I had a much more narrow view of what fantasy could be, because I thought, oh, well, fantasy is writing in Tolkien's world and using Tolkien's people and so forth. And that is so wrong. You can do so much more with fantasy than that. And I plan to write a book that's a mix of fantasy and sci-fi in the future. So,
yeah.
Plus, I really loved Asimov, and I, Robot is an amazing series of short stories compiled into a single novel, kind of. It kind of forms its own story when you put them all together. And nobody has done a good movie or mini yet, and I'm waiting for it. So somebody, please do that for me. Go
and do it right.
Yeah, do the actual stories. Do the stories for My Robot.
Yeah, not their Hollywood version of it.
Yeah, not something that's, we'll work within that confines, but make a whole new that story. It's a good story.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Let's see. Let's back up a little bit and talk about some of your history, because I know it plays a part in probably the way you write, especially Lost Helix. You were an Army intelligence. I cannot talk today. I'm sorry. An Army intelligence analyst, and later a computer programmer. So how did that? What can you talk about of how those experiences come into your writing?
Well, let's start with the computer programmer side of that. One thing that I find really annoying about computers today is the diversity. We do not need diversity in computer languages. We need one language. And somebody actually complained to me. It's like, hey, Kurt, DJ seems to be able to hack into every system. Yeah, because they're all working on the same operating system. We've gotten it down to one operating system. And now it's just a matter of knowing your way past all the variety of security around that operating system. So, I also tried to write his computer battles in a way that was realistic, to computers, and also at the same time not boring to the audience, because if you actually watch a computer battle, you'd be bored out of your mind. And if you watch a computer battle on, say, Sneakers or yeah, I think it was Sneakers. That was a great movie, but also they just did a really bad job. Most of the time when they do a computer battle in a movie, it's like, oh, look at all these cute little graphics flying around. Nobody's using graphics. It's all just code, and it's all just numbers and letters and esoteric stuff flying by. But for the U.S. intelligence stuff, I was in the Army intelligence for 6 years. I rose to the rank of sergeant. I worked some interesting missions, and I'm not going to talk about pretty much anything that I did there.
Understandable.
And I completely understand the inner workings of the intelligence community in a general basic sense. Like, this is how you handle classified information, which drives me mad whenever I'm watching a movie. Like the opening to Suicide Squad. Oh, let's just walk into a restaurant and whip out a top secret document, flop it down on the table. Oh, waiter, bring me some more coffee. Oh, yeah. No. No. I actually had that job when I was in the Army for a brief period of time, taking classified material to the base commander, and we had to double wrap that sucker and do all this other stuff and put all the proper labels on it, move it to the building across the secured military base, unwrap everything inside another secure room, and then wrap it all up again and bring it back. So no, don't do that stuff. But my actual job title was 98 Charlie, Electronic Warfare Signals Intelligence Analyst. And that's all I'm going to tell you about my job. Other than
a cool title.
Ever write about anything having to do with it, because I'm
yeah. That is so true. There's so many, I have so many questions here. I'm trying to figure out the ones that I want to ask the most. So you mentioned that you purposely wrote this one poem badly because that's what you needed for that story. But have you ever had something that you wrote that you just absolutely hated? You also mentioned 3 novels you threw away. Was that just because you hated them, or because, talk about that a little bit?
It would be those first 2 novels, to tell you the truth. The very first one was an Anne Rice knockoff, and it was both good and bad. I mean, like, it had good moments, but the overall plot just didn't happen. There was no plot. It was just an ambling of events that occurred. But there was one part where I killed off 2 characters almost randomly, and they were very short-lived characters and had done nothing wrong, and one of the members in my class got upset. How could you kill them off? They did nothing. That was it. I'm a writer now. I'm stuck. I'm writing. I'm going to write for the rest of my life. That and the novel that came after it, which was about robots trying to get equal rights amongst man, and they end up giving up on the whole deal and just running away to Io and starting their own colony and defending it from us. It's a very, very different direction from what I would later see in The Matrix. But it did the same thing. It didn't actually have a plot. I mean, like, if you looked for it, it kind of had a plot.
But it was just good practice.
It was basically like, there was a perfectly good plot and somebody shoved it down the stairs and fell down the stairs screaming and crying, and the shambles at the bottom was what I actually wrote.
Yeah. I think we've all been there.
Yeah, and neither of them actually had a title. I mean, like, I refer to the first one as my vampire story, and the other one is my robot story. I never actually got around to titling them right.
Yeah, the love just wasn't there.
No, just sadness.
Yeah. So what's the favorite thing you've ever written?
Oh, the favorite thing I've ever written is whatever I'm working on right now, almost every single time.
Yeah.
And right now I'm working on a novel that I really love a lot. And I still have 2.5 chapters that are in outline. But at the same time, the way I work is I kind of roll across it in waves, so that by the time I get to the end of the first draft, I'm actually on draft 5.
Oh, cool.
And while I'm writing this, I also have a writers group who's reading it. So I'm like charging ahead, trying to, let people know that Lost Helix exists. And I've got a second writer group with a different novel that is complete, but I'm charging ahead on this one and trying to make sure that I stay edited and completed. And the working title, I'll give you the working title, is Snuzz. Snuzz is a sneeze that never was.
Oh.
And the main character, his sneezes, well, there's 3 main characters, but the main character, the wizard, his sneezes cause him to teleport. And that's like a really big problem for him. So, and it's
that sounds
actually,
awesome.
It's a key part of the story.
It's like, what kind of trouble can you get into when you can't control a sneeze?
Yes, and it's a stigma. It's not a good thing amongst wizards for you to not be able. You sneeze and you just end up somewhere else. You're not supposed to do that.
That's excellent. Will it also be young adult?
No. It'll be very, very fun, but it also has some. It features some whiskey and some snuff, funny snuff, which is just
awesome.
So other than that, it's mostly family friendly. Yeah,
that's awesome.
But the other one is Balance of Crimson, and that's set on a planet that's just overrun by crime, and the main character is an assassin in a crowdsourced murder world, and he just hates the world that he's living in. It's very, very grim. And then there's a lot of happy cats. So I balance it with joyful happy cats, including one important character named Mr. Snuggle Whiskers. So yeah.
Mr. Snuggle Whiskers.
Yes, look forward to those books coming soon, I hope.
And so is Mr. Snuggle Whiskers with the assassin?
Actually, he's with the assassin's private investigator friend, but yeah, they kind of they get along. And Mr. Snuggle Whiskers is actually an important character who comes in and affects the plot at different times.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what do you find is the most challenging with your writing?
Oh, that is definitely bringing out the emotions that I want to bring out in the characters. And I have struggled with that from the beginning my whole life. And the best thing that's ever happened to me was the publishing of the Emotions Thesaurus.
Yeah.
I strongly recommend that if you're going to be a writer and if you're not naturally spitting out like powerful emotional scenes where your characters are showing their emotions to the reader in a way that the reader's already engaged with, go buy that book. Read the foreword. Always read the foreword to something like that. And you learn so much more just from that. And also always read the foreword to any novel from any author that you love. If he puts a foreword in it, read that foreword. It might just be some silly stuff about this is my life and this is the things I do with my time, or it might actually give you some advice.
Yeah.
Even if it's just by accident, they often give you really good advice for writers.
That's cool. I like that insight. It's interesting you mentioned the Emotions Thesaurus. I remember when it was still just their blog before they put it out in print, and I totally agree. I have my print copy, and I have shared it with many writers groups and said, okay, you really need this. And it's wonderful.
Oh yeah, my print copy is holding on by bare teeth. It's just threads now.
Yeah. Well, it's great because it gets your mind working along those lines, and I've found that now I can just kind of glance at it and then I'm back in that mindset, and it just helps you to think of, well, what does this emotion really look like? What would it really feel like? And they put so much work into that.
Yes, it's an excellent thing. It's an invaluable tool.
Cool. So our favorite question is, would you say being a writer is a gift or a curse, and why?
The answer to that is yes.
Yes.
It is a wonderful, fulfilling, enriching, grueling, taxing, draining activity. And while I'm doing it, I'm thinking, damn, I could just be playing video games right now. It wouldn't be any stress. I could be mouthing off to some 13-year-old who just shot me. and it would be a lot more, or I could just be watching cartoons. I could put on Phineas and Ferb right now.
It'd be awesome.
And just be relaxing. But at the same time, when I'm like, if it's like early in the day and I'm playing video games or I'm watching Phineas and Ferb or something else, I'm thinking, you know what, you could actually be accomplishing something. You could be doing something that when you're done, you'll be tired and it will have drained your brain, but what you've done has created something.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely both.
Yes, I agree. And so far, most writers I've asked that question do agree, because you have those wonderful moments where the words are just flowing and the energy is flowing and it's like, this is awesome. But then you have those days where you're just like, I like to think of the analogy of, or the visual of Harry Potter sitting there with Umbridge's pen in detention writing, I will not tell lies, and it's pulling his own blood from his body. I'm like, sometimes writing feels like that. I'm just, I will not tell lies.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so what do you think has been your toughest criticism so far?
Actually, the toughest criticism, and this is based on the fact that I actually had to do something about it, came before Dancing Lemur accepted my novel. And this is going to be a piece of writing advice that I'm going to send out to any other new writers out there. They said, Scott, we got about halfway through your novel. We're enjoying it a lot, but we've already counted 8 point of view characters. 8. These people don't need a point of view in here. What's going on? If you can cut this whole novel down to 3 point of view characters, we'll take another look at it. So there's like deleted scenes from Lost Helix and a rewritten scene that's still in there that's very, very different from what it originally was. And I had to go through there, and the first decision I had to make was who are going to be the 3 point of view characters. There's a girl character in there named Maya that you haven't met yet, because
Not yet.
That's in their travels. And she has a whole scene that's just gone. And I had to find a new way to bring that information in through either DJ, Corman, or DJ's dad, because I decided that those were the 3 people that you needed to know in order for this story to be told. And everything else, I had to rewrite this. I think I did a good job with it. They think awesome. I did a good job with it because they published it, of course. So
that's always a plus.
Yes. And honestly, the book is much better for it. It was a challenge, but the book is much better for it.
Yeah. Haven't you, I don't know about you, but I've always found that sometimes the hardest criticism, when you take a moment to really think about it, and then, like you said, put in the work, it does make the story better.
Yes. That and everything else that they've had to sell me, I've been like bringing forward into my other novels. Like I have a whole book just sitting off to the side that's already been through writing groups. And it's like, oh, now I got to go in there and do all those things I just learned from Dancing Lemur.
And make it readable.
Yes,
that's
make
awesome.
It better. Make it much better. Yes.
That's wonderful. So I know one of my favorite things is actually working with the editor. What was your experience like working with your editor?
Well, I actually, I hired a professional editor at one point before I found writing groups. Okay. And they did a good job. And if my book had been ready for publication, had been like one step from publication ready, they would have done a great job for getting it that last step. But it wasn't one step. It was like 10 steps from publication ready. So my best editors have actually been writing groups. I know a lot of people have trouble forming writing groups, especially when you open them up to the public, because, you're rolling the dice on who's going to show up. But I lucked into a good one. Writers of Sherman Oaks is the group that I'm with. And it's just, they're wonderful people, give me really good advice. And they're all giving me different good advice. So that's helped me a lot. The best editors that are professional editors that I worked with were the ones at Dancing Lemur. And I went through like 4 or 5 rounds of editings with them. And almost, and every single round that I went through, I said, yeah, you're right, 90% of the time, or not, or more, 90 or more, you know. And then a few times I'm like, nah, you don't understand where I'm going with this. So I'm going to stick with what I meant. And a couple of times on those, it's come back, it's like, no, we understood what you meant. I'm like, oh, okay, you're right. Writing a book is a really difficult process, and there's a lot of layers to it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get it right on the first draft by a long, long margin. And the more drafts that you do, the better it gets, until you get to a point where you just got to stop.
Yeah. So that brings up a great question. How do you know when it's time to stop?
That's the hard part, isn't it?
It is a hard part, because sometimes even after you let it go, you're like, oh, I could have. Oh.
Lost Helix, I stopped and I felt I was finished, and I decided that I was going to get it out there, and I went through the various levels of trying to get it published, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to just publish this on my own if nobody wants it. And I'm so glad that I didn't come to that, because where I'd stopped obviously was not a good place to stop. And Dancing Lemur helped me to make it a much better novel. So yeah, the place to stop is when somebody or you decide to publish the novel. That's when you stop. Yeah. Never stop before 5 drafts. If you stop before 5 drafts, you're not done. No, just keep going. Do it again.
Totally agree. Okay, so we've talked about your hardest criticism. What was the best compliment you've ever been given for your writing?
So far, yeah, it's definitely from everybody who has written a review online about Lost Helixes, and it's been common to basically all of them. It's that this is an easy, fast read. It's just enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And that's the best compliment, because that's my first goal. Whatever else might be going on in the story, whatever else might happen in there, first thing I want to do is I want you to enjoy reading this. I want you to have a good time. I want you to say, I loved reading that book. I would read it again. You should read this thing. And clearly I've accomplished that, because they all keep telling me the same thing. This is a good, fun, fast read. You just rip right through it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I just barely got it this weekend. And I was trying to read some of Damien's book too. I was trying to get ready for these interviews, and I am really enjoying it. And I'm looking forward to reading time and getting to finish it. I'm like, there's not enough reading in my day. So at least now I've got another good novel that I can get through. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Okay. So what do you do when you're not writing?
Well, I've already talked about a couple of things. Like I watch cartoons. I watch a lot of cartoons. When I was a kid, I loved cartoons, and Saturday morning was like, church was on Sunday, but Saturday morning cartoons was my religion, really. And basically the end of my cartoon watching period was noted by Soul Train. When Soul Train came on, cartoons were over for the week. Time to go outside again. Cartoons have grown up with me, so now we've got like the Venture Brothers were a wonderful cartoon. The Simpsons have continued to be a wonderful thing. I'm watching the Treehouse of Horrors right now. That's what I'm doing with my month of October. Phineas and Ferb were wonderful, and Milo Murphy's Law by the same guys right after. I also love playing video games. I have a 60 game console, which was like all the Midway arcade classics. I got it mostly for Miss Pac-Man, which I wasted so many quarters on. And now I finally own it. I feel like they should have just given it to me for all the quarters I gave them. But and then I love hiking. When I was a kid, I used to go fishing. I was an expert at piloting a canoe with 3 or 1 person in it. And then I gradually came to realize I really don't like fishing. I don't like catching the fish. I don't like baiting the hook. I don't like cleaning the fish. I don't like any of that stuff. Yeah. But I really like nature. I'll just go hiking. So now I'm
Yeah.
a hiker. I was in the Army for 6 years, and they would send us out on field training exercises, and it was grueling and filthy and disgusting. And then you come back and you take a shower, and you never felt cleaner in your life. And now I do that to myself on purpose.
That's great,
Somebody I
though.
work with told me, you don't have to do that anymore. I'm like, I know it. I don't understand why I keep doing it. I seem to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm sure there's some beautiful places that you get to see that way that you
amazing.
can't see any other way.
And the only way to see it is actually to go out there and see it with your own eyes. Strange thing I do when the sun starts going down, if I'm hiking alone or camping alone, everything stops. I just sit there and watch the world change colors for an hour.
Yeah.
It's really an amazing sight.
That is cool. And I can see how that would be just very relaxing too. Kind of.
Very relaxing, very mind clearing.
Well, we're almost out of time, but what advice would you give? I know you've already given us some advice for new writers, but if there's any one thing that you think is essential that they have in their toolbox at the beginning of their journey, what would that be?
Learning. You will always be learning. Learn the art, learn the business, and then assume that everything changed while you weren't looking, and then go and learn them all again.
That is so true.
Just keep learning. Learn what the market is. Once upon a time, half a bookstore would be Westerns. And then one day, apparently, people walked into a bookstore and there was no Western section anymore. It just all vanished all at once. I don't even remember that time. I was reading an article about that. But yeah, that's the kind of seismic changes that happen all the time.
Yeah.
So learn don't chase fads. Learn like the big trends of what people really want to read.
Yeah. That's excellent advice. And I love that you said keep learning, because it does change so fast. I mean, I think about when I got serious about writing in 2008, it's an entirely different world already in the publishing world.
Absolutely.
So, well, wonderful. Well, once again, I'm so glad that you've been with us. I'll make sure we have links to Lost Helix in our notes, as well as to your YouTube channel. And I hope that we get to hear from you again sometime. We'll be watching for those new books.
I hope so too. I hope you guys have me back on for my next book, and I hope I have a next book very, very soon.
That would be awesome. Well, Scott, we have a little saying that we like to end with, and it is keep writing or start writing.
Indeed.
Awesome. So that's cool. Oh, well, how fun. I mean, I think I covered all my stuff. Is there anything that last minute you'd like to throw in? Because I can edit it and put it in before our ending.
No, I think we covered it all. I hope I gave you plenty to put up on the podcast.
Yeah.
I felt like I started talking a lot, so
But you're supposed to talk a lot. Usually when I go to edit, I edit my stuff out. I'm like, oh, I talk too much, because it's not supposed to be about me. It's supposed to be about you and what you want to share. So I think there's some great stuff here. It's all going to be in there. So
excellent. I'm glad I gave you plenty of material to work with.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I have no idea. Hillary's already started traveling, so the three of us all live here, and we try to get together in person to record our podcast because it's just more fun, and it's totally random when we do. But I know that it's going to be harder with the holidays, so I'm not exactly sure when this will go up, but it'll probably be in November. And as soon as it does, I'll send you a link and say, hey, it's up.
All right, excellent. Between now and then, I'll probably drop some teasers on social media saying, hey, and I'll re-promote your little creative interview.
Oh, awesome. I haven't even looked.
Well, that's up. It's up there, and I'm going to go and promote that. I belong to so many Facebook groups.
Yeah. Well, I'll go and share it too.
Yeah. So I'll put that out there, and I'll start teasing that, yeah, there's going to be an interview. I'll let you know when it's up.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. And like I said, hopefully it won't be that long, because we have one for this Wednesday that'll go out, and that's all we have recorded. And then today I've done your interview and Damien's interview. So those are the only things I have queued. And I'm hoping we can get one of us journaling, because we're all going to do NaNoWriMo together.
Oh, excellent.
And talk about that on the podcast. But my guess is it'll be interview, journal, interview. So it'll be within the next couple of weeks here.
Excellent. Cool.
Cool.
I look forward to it.
Thank you. Well, my family's like, are you going to cook? And I'm like, do I have to cook? So I'll let you go. And I really do appreciate you reaching out and doing this. And good luck with everything. I'm excited for you.
Hey, and if you come up with anything else you want to do and you need another author, just let me know. All right.
Cool. Awesome. I will. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Have a good afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.